America's not unique in its sins as a country. We're not unique in our evils, to be honest with you. I think where we may be singular is our refusal to acknowledge them and the legends and myths we tell about our inherent, goodness to hide and cover and conceal so that we can maintain a kind of willful ignorance that protects our innocence. See, the thing is that when the Tea Party was happening, we were saying, pundits, oh, it's just about economic populism. It's not about race. When people knew, social scientists were already writing that what was driving the Tea Party were anxieties about demographic shifts, that the country was changing, that they were seeing these racially ambiguous babies on Cheerios commercials, that the country wasn't quite feeling like it was a white nation anymore. And people were screaming from the top of their lungs, yo, this is not just simply economic populism. This is the ugly underbelly of the country. See, the thing is this, and I'll say this and I'll take the hit on it. There are communities that have had to bear the brunt of America confronting, white Americans confronting the danger of their innocence. And it happens every generation. So somehow we have to kind of, oh my God, is this who we are? And just again, here's another generation of babies. Think about it, that 2-year-old had his bones broken by 2 parents trying to shield him from being killed. A woman who has been married to this man for as long as I've been on the planet almost, lost her husband. For what? And so what we know is that the country has been playing politics for a long time on this hatred. We know this. So it's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us. I've had the privilege of growing up in a tradition that didn't believe in the myths and the legends because we had to bear the brunt of them. Either we're going to change, Nicole, or we're going to do this again and again, and babies are going to have to grow up without mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts, friends, while we're trying to convince white folk to finally leave behind a history that will maybe, or embrace a history that might set them free from being white. Finally.
Eddie Cloud Jr., they like our rhythm, but they don't like our blues. And we got to remember that. Hi, I'm Harold Bell, and this is Speak the Truth. And this is a special edition of Speak the Truth. And I am your host, and I spent the last 50 years in sports talk radio. I'm celebrating 50 years of inside sports, 50 plus years in the community working with youth gangs and at-risk children. And I come from a law enforcement family. My brother Bobby was a U.S. Marshal, my older brother. My younger brother Earl, the Bull Bell, was a sergeant on the DC Police Department. And my co-host, he's from a family of law enforcement. I'll let you tell him about that. So we got people here that not, against law enforcement. We done been out there. We done seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to be talking about that today with our special guest that is in the studio with us today. This brother is a native of Prince George's County, come out of the school system in Prince George's County, went on to the University of Maryland where he got his degree in criminology. And he has been there 20 years in the sheriff's office. My man Melvin High is retiring finally from something. And John Carr is on the campaign trail to replace, of course, Mel High. So John, Big John, we'd like to welcome you to Speak the Truth, man. So take off your coat and get ready, brother.
Look, I'm ready. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me just to be here to engage with everybody and to talk about public safety, law enforcement, and where we are as far as the Black community. So thank you again. I greatly appreciate this.
No problem. I'm gonna bring in my co-host now, Gary Johnson, and let him introduce himself, then we'll get back to our special guests that are on the panel with us. Gary?
I'm gonna make it short. Gary Johnson, native Washingtonian. My mother was one of the first police officers, female police officers on the force in the 50s and 60s. So I grew up in a police family as well. My godmothers and aunts, police officers. The man you see behind me, who Assistant Chief Tillman O'Brien, was in and out of our house. And I remember he used to have study sessions on the MPD so the cops and the police officers could get, you know, go through the ranks, having their own study sessions. They used to have them in my basement, in my house. So, and I'm the founder and publisher of BlackMenInAmerica.com. And with Harold, we're trying to make a difference. We are making a difference.
Okay. Gary, introduce your guest.
Wow, I've got some people down here. I've got William H. Spivey, is a retired FBI agent. Mr. Spivey, you want to say a couple things about yourself? Just unmute yourself.
Take yourself off mute.
You on mute, Bill. You on mute. You still on mute. Lower left-hand corner. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I am a retired FBI agent. I was an FBI agent for 20 years, but I'm kind of unique because I was in both arenas. I was also a police officer in the Tidewater area for 5 years, and I worked homicide and robbery. So I've seen it from both sides, from the local and the federal level. So hopefully I can bring some insight to this discussion, because Gary sent me something a few days ago with this kid who was insulting a police officer, and it was really troubling. And I commented to him regarding that. And so that's why I'm here. And I'll try to contribute and give my insight from both sides of both sides of the arena, the local and the federal level.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm.
I see also we got Rich. Rich, you showing your face there, brother. So you want to say, 30, 40 seconds? Oh, Rich and froze. Oh, there you go. Did you hear that, Rich? You want to come in and say anything, or you just hanging in for the dialogue? Man, Rich is frozen.
Is he froze? Okay, we'll get
He's
back.
frozen.
Okay, and I got Al, man from Alexandria, Virginia. He's a regular here on Speak the Truth. He's a legend when it comes to working with young people in Alexandria, Virginia. He was one of the founders of the Untouchables. I worked with him for a number of years in the schools and in the DC Recreation Department, where he's employed. This guy has been out there in the struggle. There's no doubt about it. So I would like to welcome my dear friend, Mr. Michael Johnson. How you doing, Michael?
Good. How y'all doing today? Glad to be here.
Tell him a little bit about yourself, brother.
Michael Johnson grew up, born and raised in Alexandria, Virginia. Attended T.C. Williams High School, which is now City High School. Played football there. My current job, I work as a community outreach specialist, bridging the gap between law enforcement and the community. I'm CIT trained, which is crisis intervention. I'm the only non-law enforcement person in the city that can come out and go out on a call with a police officer and de-escalate a situation or a scene, whether it's with kids or adults. And I've been working with the Department of Recreation for the last 26 years in this current position. And I work a lot in the streets with the young men and young ladies that we're having our social issues with right now.
Okay, thank you, Michael. What we want to do, man, we want to kick this thing off because this is really has gotten the world's attention, really. I want to talk about these baby kids in Minnesota. Can we run that video, Gary, so everybody get a chance to look at it who has not seen it?
Yeah, let me pull that up. Here we go. These are the kids. Here we go.
I'm running his ass. fried Oreo head ass.
I bet when I saw one of them in a fry pan, they had one burn.
Strategic back again, you guys.
All right.
Wow. Wow, man. You know, that is really sad. I mean, these kids out there in diapers, man, barefooted, and calling the cops MFs, bitches, Oreo head. And you have to stop and think, man, where are the parents? Where are the parents? So I want to kind of lead off today and bring in John Carr and say, you know, how do you see this situation and where are we headed, John, when you see young kids in diapers, man, with this type of behavior?
So watching this video and actually being out there, because I used to be a school resource deputy here in Prince George's County. Right now, we're in a perfect storm. And when I say perfect storm is that you have mistrust for public safety. You have parents that don't know how to interact or deal with the kids. And what you saw there with the child cursing, the child's behavior, he learned that behavior. That's out inside his home. That's what he sees. And this is what our young people view as the culture. You know, we don't like 12. You know, we don't like, like anybody wearing that uniform and a gun and a badge because they're the enemy. And this is what we're seeing on a regular basis. One thing that we try to do is we try to communicate and try to show that human element that, hey, just because somebody's wearing that uniform doesn't mean that they're against you. I mean, it goes back to when parents will always say, you see somebody in the store and you wearing a uniform, you better stop. Otherwise, I'm gonna have him lock you up. So when you see stuff like that, and you see the older kids promoting that, Oreo head and going along with that type of behavior, this has now become the norm. And this is what we're seeing on a consistent basis, the fact that our community, when I say our community, the Black community has really separated itself in reference to its view on public safety, regardless of if you have a Black officer on the scene trying to talk to somebody. Either you're going to be blue or either you're going to be Black, one or the other. You can't do both. But it is very disheartening to see somebody of that young of an age and it to be okay with, you know, their older brothers and sisters. And then the parents are just non-existent right now. You know, we always used to look at it as our kids are a reflection of us and that we wanted to make sure that, hey, we raised them and taught them right. Right now, it just seems the norm has really started to go far, far left to where anything and everything is acceptable. I mean, we see people walk outside now, t-shirts, no bra, you know, come outside in their pajamas, wearing t-shirts. I mean, they'll actually go to the church some way like that, you know, and now things are starting to be very acceptable that wouldn't be in the past. So as a culture, I really think we need to really reevaluate. We need to look at each other. We need to check each other. We need to be honest and say, hey, this isn't right. This is a problem. And the fact that that young man or that baby was able to then swing at the officer, you know, and if that officer were to grab that child, he would be, that snippet would be in the news. That snippet would be showing an officer being rough with a child, and then there'll be an uproar in reference to that officer's conduct. But again, it used to take a village, and no matter what happened, you'll have Miss Johnson, whoever in that neighborhood or community would have wound up whipping that child, and then would have took him right on home, and then he would have got a whooping there. Them days are over and done with, you know, because if you try to correct the child, not to say physically, but even verbally, why are you talking to my child? This is my child. This is a child. Yeah, I'm an adult. You need to work with me. And that's something that we need to break these barriers, because again, we're going down a dark path. And like I said, it's a perfect storm because we're struggling to recruit. And, you know, when I say struggling to recruit is we want people from our communities that look like us to actually serve in those communities. Well, how are you going to do that when it seems that everybody in that community has an issue with what you represent? It's not so much what you represent, but who they think you represent. And I have my master's in public administration, and I actually wrote my thesis on the African-American community and law enforcement. You know, we've never really trusted fully public safety or law enforcement, you know, from them enforcing Jim Crow laws from the 70s and civil rights. I mean, we can go on and on and on in reference to law enforcement roles in the African-American community. but we have to make some changes, and it really starts at home. But it's going to take both arenas, you know, the public safety arena, the community arena, nonprofits. It's going to take everybody to try to address and deal with this.
Bill Spivey, come on in, Bill.
Get off mute, Bill.
The thing that I found very sad about that was that behavior that you saw. He was not born with that behavior.
That's right.
He learned that behavior. It's the same thing with, you find these kids who you heard people say they are racist. They weren't born racist. Someone taught them that. And with that particular situation, it tells me a lot about the parents. And somebody may say, well, you're prejudging the parents. I'm not prejudging the parents, because I know that my mother or father, or I know that Gary's mother and father, you wouldn't have been out on the street, number one, in a diaper and with no shoes on. That'd been the first thing. So that tells me a lot about that. And the thing that troubles me with this is that type of behavior is going to continue to be perpetuated. That kid is going to grow up and he's going to have kids, and he's going to teach his kids the same thing that you just saw with him. The thing that troubles me a little bit more about that is that that kid, and people might find it hard to believe, but those police, they take note of him. They know who he is. And in 10 years from now, I may not be here, Gary may not be here, but none of us be here. That kid probably is going to get gunned down. And what they will do is they will go back and they will pull this tape to show his propensity for hatred on police. Because you know, in the past, that's what happens. When you get a guy, he's shot 90 times by the police, what they do is they go back and they say, well, 5 years ago, he was arrested for selling marijuana, which has nothing in the world to do with you shooting him 90 times. And so that's what troubles me with this particular video. I hope that kid some kind of way gets in some kind of outreach program or something that will change his life. But what I saw in that video, he's a dead man walking.
Oh, okay. Michael Johnson, come on in, Michael.
Just watching that video, it is very disturbing, but I also can pinpoint, like some of you can, that number one, that kid is in a low income neighborhood. Number two, his mother or the parents are probably no more than 25 to 30 years old, you know, and our educational system is set up to capture that young man, and that's the prison to pipeline right there. Because like Mr. Spivey said, they're gonna take note of him at a very young age. I had a young man in my journey that was about, his name is Kevin Perry, matter of fact. Kevin Perry's mother, on paydays, when I first was working in the rec department in a rec center, his mother would always be around all these different city employers, you know, men. And I kept looking at it and said, something going on here. His mother was a prostitute that would actually come up and capture guys' paydays and, you know, and sell her body to them. She might do 2 or 3 men a day. This guy, Kevin Perry, saw that. He had 2 sisters. All his sisters was very belligerent, like we just saw in that clip. And Kevin Perry was written off in the 7th grade because of his behavior and his attitude. But lo and behold, with some guidance and myself and a couple other men that jumped into Kevin's life, Kevin is the first one in his family to obtain a college degree. Kevin is now working for a Fortune 500 company as one of their top executives. But the thing was, his journey was just like that young kid's journey that I saw there. My interaction with law enforcement is that my brother was assistant chief of police in New Mexico at one time. And I hated the police because as they rolled past my neighborhood, they would throw the finger up, call us a nigga. I guess y'all know about Alexandria. Back then, there's still Confederates over there. And they would ride past our neighborhood and say all kinds of things to us. So we wouldn't want to get involved in becoming a law enforcement officer because what they did to us back then. But my brother gave me a message when I was 16 years old, that he said I wouldn't even live to be 21 because Yeah, I hung on the streets. You know, I smoked my weed back in the day. I went to college. I went in the Marine Corps, but my parents wouldn't stand for me to be so disrespectful like that young kid was. You'd have got your butt toe up, and we all know that. But I say that to say this. In my travels, working with some of the law enforcement officers in Alexandria, that's what they come up against on a daily basis when they go into those housing project units. So you have to have discipline to not be sucked into that type of behavior where you're going to respond in a negative way. What we try to do is kids like that, we do pay special attention to them, Mrs. Spivey, but we make sure that we incorporate them every day of our travels to see how they're doing in school, in the community or a direct center. I'll pop up at the school, and the first thing the kid asks me is, why are you here? Because you don't have any kids going to school here. I said, but I'm here for you, you know? And I don't know if Harold shared this with you. I know one segment we did, a couple of months back, we had a kid that was stabbed and killed over here. And I was up on 4 of those fights leading up to that killing. And one of the things that I noticed about the behavior, not only of the males, but the females, they were just like that young kid. And the first thing I thought about was just like Gentleman John and Mr. Spivey said, was that this is learned behavior. That when they go home, they have adults teaching them this behavior because that adult is not comfortable with where they're at in their life at this time. So what they're doing is passing on their mistakes to their kid. And Mr. Spivey said this as well. That kid is going to pass that on to his kids, and it's a generational thing. That's what we have to break. That's what we have to stop, you know? And I see young men walking around with their pants hanging off, and I say, pull your pants up, you know? And I do this consistently. So now when they see me coming, they automatically, if their pants sagging, they pull them up because they say, we know you got something to say, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull my pants up, which is good, you know, which is good. It means I can lead them in another direction. But I think as a community of Black communities, we all come from different geographical locations, but we all have the same issues. And one of them is that when our kids was out there trying to be gangsters and big time drug dealers, a lot of us pulled away from that. A lot of us let them do their thing. It was in me that I couldn't allow that to happen on my watch because I saw so many of my friends. Out of the 10 guys I grew up with and hung out with, 3 of us still alive. One of them is serving 65 years in prison. And this guy will give you the shirt off his back, but he got high one day, got in the cab, shot a cab driver in the back of the head. You know, these are the things that happen in our community. These are the reason why with Harold and Mr. Johnson here and the rest of you, I will come in and participate in your neighborhood with you to help you out because I want the same to come to me. Because right now, that we're the ones that identifying the problem, we have to also be the ones that bring solutions to this problem. And one of the solutions is that we all are going to be held accountable for the behavior of these kids, whether we want to or not, because we're not interacting with those young folks the way we should be. And that's why we have a lot of these young girls, 15, 16 years old, having babies. And that's the results right there. That's the result.
Okay. Rich, is Rich still there? Rich?
You're on mute, Rich. Take yourself off mute. Lower left-hand corner. Hit that microphone button. There you go. Come on. Man, Rich, we still can't hear you. Wait a minute, Hank. No, that ain't it either. Man, Rich got so much equipment now, he, look at it.
Who is that, Ron up there? Is that Ron?
Yeah, we got Ron.
Sure.
Go ahead. Rich, we can't hear you, man. Get that technical thing going out. See if you can solve that thing.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ron.
Come on, Ron.
No, I was just here because I was just interested in the, the different viewpoints that officers may have and guys that work with kids like that. Because although I grew up in the district, I never seen nothing like that in my life. That was pretty bad. That's actually scary because one, if he lives long enough, he's probably going to shoot somebody at some point. If he lives long enough, the police are going to shoot him. I mean, right now, looking at that, his life expectancy isn't very long.
Exactly.
Okay. Gary, why don't you come on in and then take us on up to Denzel Washington. Gary, come on in.
Yeah, well, you know, like a lot of you, this stuff is scary. Kid out there with diapers and like you all have already said, this is learned behavior. So it's modeled in his home by people who are older. And when I say you all may be giving the parents an older age, I'm thinking parents might be 15, 16, 17, not even in their 20s. And maybe they getting it from grandma and mama. I've seen mamas and grandmas in the store cursing kids out. You better do this or I beat your effing, you know, all that. I'm like, this is in the grocery store and that's grandma talking to them. And then grandma might be 28. Because I know I got a couple of friends who are grandmothers, they 29 and 30. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So yeah, the Denzel piece I think is worth, Mr. Bell, you mentioned that. Let's go to see what Denzel Washington was saying during a recent interview.
With the yummy.
You know, incarceration rates in America has been a problem, especially as opposed to minorities. And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
You know, I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? He said, little yummies. Look up, Google Lil Yummy. Lil Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? Yeah. It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And yeah, well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy, man. That is really heavy. John, you're running for Prince George's County Sheriff. And you know, when I look, and I guess I could say this about a lot of us, and our interactions as Black men, that we grew up in an atmosphere where cops were pretty hostile and still are hostile when it comes to Black men. And my thing is this: when you in command of a department, and I done held numerous police community relations forums, and you find a difficult time, John, of getting the white cops to come out who need to be out there. So my thing has always been this, that Black cop or that Black sheriff, he needs to rein in these officers, his colleagues that work with them. How do you deal with that, John? And when you say, hey man, look, that's your partner, you need to let him know what's happening. John, come on in, John.
So 20 years at the Prince George's County Sheriff's Office, worked my way all the way up through the ranks to now that I'm a colonel and I oversee our Bureau of Field Operations, which consists of warrants, child support, domestic violence, fugitive, everything you see on the street, I oversee. When I look and what we bring in, and I'm just going to say this as a whole, and I'm only going to speak just for Prince George's County, and when we talk about trying to recruit and trying to bring people in from the community, we're recruiting outside of Prince George's County. We're recruiting outside at individuals who are not used to certain neighborhoods or not used to interacting with certain individuals. And that's not to say that they can't be here and they can't do an excellent job. But I can tell you now, you have individuals who are, you know, white and even some Black who, you know, didn't grow up in that type of environment. When they go to Capitol Heights or District Heights, they seem to operate a little bit more different than if they were to be in a College Park or a Bowie area. Because the mindset is, I need to talk to these individuals over here like this in order for me to get respect. And those low income areas, such as that Capitol Heights, you tend to be a little bit more rougher. You tend to curse more. You tend to be a little bit more no nonsense, you know. And then when you see in those areas such as Bowie, okay, well, hold on. These people who, you know, $500,000, $400,000 homes, I'm gonna act a little bit different. What I tell my folks is we treat everybody the same, and you show everybody with respect, and you show empathy, and you understand exactly where that person is at that moment in time. A lot of times when we go to these calls, a lot of people are in need. Some people just want to vent. So sometimes they may be cursing, yelling, and screaming, but you need to be confident in what, one, your training and ability, but two, you need to try to understand what the issues and what the problems are. The biggest thing that we can do is once we go someplace and we identify what's going on, is to make sure that we solve the problem so we don't have to come back there over and over again. Communicate, talk, work with individuals. I can care less what income and where they are right now as far as what community, they still have the same issues, no matter what they are. We do have a culture when it comes to law enforcement, when you look at white and black and how people may view things. I mean, we come from all different backgrounds. So when somebody is acting out of pocket, you do need to check them. You do need to make sure that, hey, hold on. I don't like the way you were speaking and such, or step in and let me deal with the situation. Because it gets us to the point to right now that the up in Annapolis actually had to change in a law enforcement reform bill that you have now the duty to intervene. If you don't, you are going to get charged. You're the one that's going to be actually put on the seat because you didn't interact. And we actually show in our trainings, we have a video down in Florida where a young lady intervened on a sergeant. Gentleman was in handcuff, happens to be an African-American male. It was a white sergeant there. The female was Latino. She actually intervened and tried to pull the sergeant off the guy because he was already handcuffed. And the sergeant turned around and grabbed her by the throat. Now, both of them are in uniform. So it tells you, yeah, it tells you when we talk about race, we still have race issues within the department and agency because we all have different views on things. And as Gary said, or Mr. Johnson said about his dad and being able to go and do the study groups, you have a lot of study groups where you'll have white and black study groups. And I can tell you, just working in different agencies, we had a lot of African Americans or blacks who, I'm happy with where I am. I don't want to promote up because then I may get transferred, I may get moved out. So I want to stay running the streets. And then you have those whites who will promote. And then you have the issues of, hey, why are they treating us this way? So what I try to do is I always try to promote and tell people, hey, I want you to take my job. I want you to be the next colonel. I want you to keep and continue to move up and develop yourself. Go back to school, go get different training. But I'm telling you, we, and Mr. Spivey said it, there are some people who they label individuals like that baby. They label certain communities. They label, you know, different officers and who they are. So it's something that we really do need to work on because it's still a problem. You know, public safety reflects the community.
John, I want to hold you right there. John, back in St. Louis when Michael Brown got gunned down, we know there was a lot of publicity, a lot of writings, and there was a story in Political magazine right here in the Washington area. And after they got through writing about how Michael Brown was murdered, they said, Ferguson next door, Prince George's County. Now, y'all may not have seen that. I read the whole story. You cannot find it now. But they were talking, and see what they were saying is, what happens in PG County, what happens in DC, we are right there together. And it rubs off, man. So how do we bring, you know, for example, somebody else come in. You know, we had a mayor in DC do a stop and frisk, undercover, over in Ward 8. They arrested 70% Black folks, man, stop and frisk, doing stop and frisk. But no, and Black Lives Matter had to carry the mayor and the police chief, Newsom, to court to bring that out, that the mayor had, this is one of the most, you know, notorious things that you can do to a community, a Black community, is stop and frisk. So you working over in PG County, you got to worry about what's also happening over in DC, man. And that's a heavy load, John. Say something on that, then we'll move to somebody else.
No, it is a heavy load because I can tell you now, we all work hand in hand together. When I say work hand in hand together, if you have an issue or problem in DC, trust and believe it's actually going to come out here in Prince George's County. So you're thinking that you're solving one issue and problem, but all the thing they're doing is moving around. And unless we communicate and work and talk to each other and understand exactly how we, serve our communities, because if DC is doing one thing and we're doing another, prime example is this chase policy. This chase policy where we'll have somebody that will run across the lines back and forth. And it's well known, hey, if we go over to DC and crash, DC's holding us responsible. It's a little bit different when, vice versa. But you need to work hand in hand together and stop working out of these silos that we do. We don't like to communicate. We like to say, hey, this is mine, this is my issue. But until we work hand in hand together and stop actually, again, labeling, our different communities and saying that's Southern Avenue and that's Southern Border, trust and believe, you think if you pull anybody over, you can get a warrant or you can stop somebody. That's not always the case. That's not the case. And those tactics that are used need to be evaluated. And that's what we try to do.
Okay, Bill, come on, Bill. I know you want to get in on this because this is an important topic. I know you want to get in.
I really don't want to get in on it because things that I might say is not popular. John, one of the things, and I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm not in a reflection on you, but one of the things that troubles me more than anything else, when I see these situations where you have these shootings of unarmed Black kids or whatever, the thing that bothers me more than anything else is when I see the police chiefs come on and they are kind of trying to justify what the officer did. And a lot of times, these police chiefs are African Americans. Mm-hmm. One of the things that troubled me was in a situation with, what was the guy's name? Shogun, the one that had the knee on the individual.
Oh, yeah.
You have these Black police chiefs in these different departments. Trust me, I've been a police officer. In these departments, you know what officers are racist. You know what officers are doing certain things to Black folks. And you allow this, and then all of a sudden, when you get an officer who does something like the guy did to George Floyd, then you're hanging out there and you're trying to justify their actions. I say to people, and like I say, this is not a popular thing, but I'm going to ask the question, when was the last time you heard of an FBI agent, a DEA agent, or a Secret Service agent gunning down an unarmed man? Mm. And those people are on the street. Trust me, FBI agents on the street, they're making drug arrests. They're doing a whole lot more than they used to do years ago. They just don't do financial crimes and that kind of stuff anymore. They're out working. But when is the last time you heard of it? It goes back to training. It goes back to nothing but training. You go through 16 weeks of Quantico and you go through holy hell. And you go through training after training after training. You go through hand-to-hand combat. You learn how to disarm a person if a person has a gun at your head. As a last resort, you learn moves in order to disarm these people. Today, these policemen tell you put your hands up and you tell him kiss your ass and you got a bullet. Mm-hmm. And then they turn around and say the shooting was justified. I was a police officer. Back when I was a police officer, I first went to the police department. I was a school teacher and then I went into the police department. Back during that time, you probably said, why did you leave school teaching and go into the police department? Well, during that time, back then, I was teaching school, I was making $6,500 a year. We're talking 1970. You go into the police department, they pay us $7,800 a year. So it was a raise when I went in. But I saw the difference when I went to the FBI Academy versus the training that I had at the police academy. You don't have the type of training. And one of the things when you're at the FBI Academy, the first thing they grill into you, and they grill it into you for 16 weeks, do not embarrass the FBI. And I will tell you, If you had an FBI agent that shot somebody 10 times unarmed, 9 times out of 10, his career is over. Nobody's going to try to justify it. They're not going to try to go back and say, well, yeah, he shot him 10 times, he was unarmed, but back 10 years ago, he did this, or 5 years ago, he did that. They're gonna handle you for doing something like that. So until these people start doing training, and another thing that I'm gonna say, until these police departments start really, really doing heavy recruiting and doing background investigation. I can't tell you how many departments where you have a whole line of family that have been policemen. Some police departments, they have 3 or 4 brothers that are on the police department, and all of them are on there together. You go back and you do some research, they were rednecks when they were in high school. So they came out of high school, joined the police department, and now they got a gun. Now they can really be rednecks, because now they got a gun and a badge, and they feel like they got it. They got the police department behind them. So these are some things that really concern me, and I say it all the time. And and I'm not trying to say FBI agents or DA agents are better than police officers. By no means. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it goes back to training, and it goes back to doing your due diligence and doing your background investigations on these people. Don't let them come, take a test, pass the test, send them to the academy, give them a badge and a gun, and put them on the street. If you do the right psychological evaluation, we had to take psych tests before you can come into the Bureau. If you had some kind of way where they were doing psych tests, you got the right psych test, you will pick up that they have these different views and that type of thing, because these tests are designed to bring that out. So I don't want to get on a bandwagon, but if you go back to proper training of these people and teach them how to diffuse these situations, and when you find these rednecks in these police departments, and the chiefs know that they're rednecks, you either get them in line or get them out of there.
Well said, well said, well said. Gary, come on in, Gary.
Man, how do you follow that? He done.
Let's go to Michael. Michael, what you think?
Yeah. I think 3 different topics came up listening to the last couple of speakers here. One was that the training. What we're ready to do in Alexandria is, well, let me go back. What we've done, we had a principal at one of the schools, and we worked very closely with her. And what I suggested to her was that you take those teachers that's coming in, those new teachers and some of those teachers, and you take them to those communities, to those kids and those students that they're going to be teaching, so you can get a full visual of where they come out of. What we're going to do over here in Alexandria with the Alexandria Police Department and Dr. Elizabeth Clark Lewis, I don't know if any of y'all know her, she's a professor at Howard University, a very astute professor. She's going to come over and pretty much set up a history program for the Alexandria Police Department so that they can be trained in the history of the city and the different communities and cultures that exist in those communities. Like Mr. Spivey said, I had an incident, and the young man, white guy, was from out of Maryland, some part of Southern Maryland. We had a big fight with some kids, and the mayor called me down and told me, hey, it was right in front of his house, can I come down? I went down, a couple of issues, a couple of guys I knew, so we squashed the fight. And as I stepped off the curb, one of the officers said, you need to get back up on the curb. So first thing the young man said was, see, that's how they treat us. And I said, well, don't worry about that. Let me handle this, right? Because I'm on the phone with the mayor the whole time. So after we got it resolved, I started walking back to my city vehicle with my city shirt on. I wear a CIT shirt. Like most of the trainers and the officers that do ride-alongs and the psychologists that ride with them. So I had my shirt on, and the guy said, hey, oh, now you jaywalking. And I looked at him, I thought he was joking. And he said, oh, you're gonna keep on walking. So I turned around and said, what the fuck is wrong with you? And the mayor said, well, Mike, who you talking to? I said, I'm talking to this officer that's talking about giving me a ticket for jaywalking. He said, well, get his name. And the guy must overheard the conversation, because when I turned around, he had ripped his name off and told me his name was South, but his real name was North, right? And I called my, Harold, you met him, Officer Evans.
Mhm.
So I said, hey, Benny, I said, I had an interaction with an officer I never saw before, right? Don't know him. He said, what's his name? I said, South. He said, we don't have nobody named South. He said, we got a North. So I said, well, I'm gonna come over and let me see the picture and see if this is the guy. So I went to the station and there the guy picture was, I said, that's him right there. I said, so this guy pretty much is an asshole, you know, out here on the street in a black neighborhood. If you're doing this to me and I'm wearing the city shirt and emblem, what are you doing to the regular citizen, right? So that guy was taken out of one of the black areas that he was patrolling, and they put him out on the west end near Cameron Station where the middle-class white folks and some blacks live. So I said, that's the best place for him, because maybe he'll talk to them a little differently from when he speak to the regular residents. And that's one thing that we have to push, is that when you put that uniform on, and I tell so many of those cops, because I do have the opportunity to speak to them in the roll call, is that that's a job. You put that blue uniform on, that is a job. When you take that uniform off, you're still in that job, but you also become back to that person who's just a regular human being. And I've had officers tell me about other officers from other jurisdictions, or really in the same jurisdiction, stopping them and harassing them until they pull their credentials out. You know, these are some of the things that we are facing in these communities. But that doesn't relieve the actions of our young folks, but I think that contributes to their action, because if you have a negative reaction or interaction with a law enforcement officer, it can impact you for a lifetime, you know? And one of the things we do have over here now, and I'm proud of, I've been knowing the guy for 42 years, Chief Don Hayes. He come out of Southeast Washington, D.C., you know, and he called me on a lot of things because he's off the street. And my job for him is to identify those very same cops, whether they black or white, that's not out there doing the job and interacting with the citizens the right way, you know, because we do have a lot of them rednecks that's family, been in law enforcement for 30 years. And to sum it all up, Officer Evans and myself, we just left PG County about 2 weeks ago. They had a community day. Jason Medina in the 6th District over in Washington, D.C., he calls us, we'll come over there with a cruiser and giveaways to give out to the kids. And they come over to Virginia. And I think that's what we have to start doing, because we do have young men recently came out of Maryland, came over to Virginia, tried to carjack a guy, and one got killed, the other one got shot, the other one ran away and got caught. Those all black youth. But what a lot of y'all don't know is, but I do know, we can let it out now, the guy that shot him was a black law enforcement officer that they was trying to carjack, you know, when they were supposed to be in school at their senior day, somewhere over in Oxon Hill, one of those schools, you know. So a young man lost his life, and then his mother come on TV and she says, why didn't he give my son a second chance? And I'm saying, miss, your son had a gun in his hand. This man had to do what he had to do to get back home to his family, you know. But yeah, we got to do more collaboration and accountability. I think that's the word I'm looking for with a lot of us and a lot of teachers and a lot of law enforcement, because we are the community, we are the protectors, and then you either go in there as a guardian or you go in as a warrior. Since I'm been in the Marine Corps, when I hit those different cities in that Marine Corps uniform, I was a warrior, you know. But now I come out and I want to work and make sure my community is better. I'm a protector because I want to protect the institution and the history of my community that was laid down by some of our forefathers and foremothers, and you know, things that they went through for us to get to where we are today. And I think a lot of us just have been taking this for granted, opposed to continually working on building our community to make it better. You know, I think that's a big thing.
Gary, come on in, Gary. We run out of time.
Yeah, one of the things I want to jump to, since we're talking about different roles of police, is Uvalde and what happened there. And so take a look at this footage that was released a couple of days ago with regard to Uvalde.
Hey, man. Come on.
Words.
I said from the beginning, before I even saw that tape, that they were operating as a bunch of cowards. That's what they were. It took that long. Some of them had shields, and it showed them going down and running back, man. While these kids are getting shot. They had
Harold,
shields.
you know, I looked at that, and that really, really, truly troubled me.
I'm telling you.
And the reason it troubled me, it goes right back to what I was trying to say the other earlier about training. I graduated from the academy, FBI Academy in 1980, and I had a guy who I became close to. We were friends, and he got assigned to Miami. And you probably don't remember, but there was 4 FBI agents that were killed in 1980. The guys came out of the bank, and they had these automatic weapons like that. And Jerry Dove and John Grogan, who was the supervisor, and 2 other agents, took them on, and they were all killed because they were up against those type of weapons. And as consequently, later on, the FBI changed from the .357 Magnum, and we went to the 9mm. I looked at that, and when you look at something like that, it goes right back to what I said about training. They wouldn't have had a problem if that had been a black man that was unarmed. But all of a sudden, they come up against a man who has a weapon like the one that they are carrying, and they retreat. And the whole time, he's shooting and he's killing people. That is truly what I'm talking about when I say training and making sure that you recruit the right people that will do the job. And going back to something that Michael said, and it reminded me of an issue I brought up earlier about you knowing that you got a police officer who's a racist and you still have him in an apartment. The thing that Michael talked about with that policeman in that black community and not knowing how to deal with black folks, and they moved him to a middle-class white community. Oh yeah, okay, so do you think that solved the problem? Because what happens when my son, or Gary's son, drive through that white neighborhood and he's in there patrolling and he sees him and pulls him over? He's going right back to what he was doing before he got transferred. And he might end up shooting my son or Gary's son or one of these other people's son. So until you really get down to doing the proper training with these policemen, you can continue to have situations like that. But they had no problem retreating because they could hear him shooting. But it was enough of them, and Gary didn't run enough of the tape because at one point during that tape, one of the policemen gets some hand sanitizer. And put on his hands. You know, so he was really in an urgency to try to save, and these are kids. We're not talking about adults. We're talking about kids who have no way of protecting themselves. And I'm gonna be quiet.
Now, Gary, you know, I'm just looking at what's happening, and we get ready to do the same old stuff over and over again.
That's right.
In campaigns, man. I'm gonna say this, man. I'm gonna say this. In Prince George's County, I would like to see the FBI pull a sting during the campaign because all the crooks are right there. The crooks are right there, man. We got crooks running against crooks.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not talking about what somebody told me. I'm talking about what I've seen. And we got Oprah Winfrey coming in, endorsing this person. We got Obama coming in, endorsing that person. Where were Oprah Winfrey and Obama when these killings were going on in Chicago? Where they from? Where they could have saved kids. But they want to come to Prince George's County and put these crooks right back in office so they can continue to do the same thing over and over again, man. So when are we going to learn? Come on in, John. Come on in, John. I'm sorry, man.
So it's several different pieces. I'm gonna talk to Bill's point when we talk about training. So universally, when you talk about an active shooter, you always go and you end the threat. So that wasn't so much as far as just the lack of training. That was the fact of, hey, they held up. And let's really be honest here. Just because somebody's wearing a gun and a badge and a uniform doesn't mean that they're always going to run the danger. The same way you can have a soldier in the military that may not always run to that situation. So you have people here, as you would say, that, hey, this job really isn't for you. Plain and simple. It's the human element. When
John,
you hear,
that's great, John. What about this police mentality? It's us against them. Well, what about that police mentality that's been going on for decades, man? We are paying their salaries. We're paying their salaries, and they talking about it's us against them. Man, if you can't do the job, get the hell off of it.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that we're talking about changing. So I think we brought up in the last go around about, families being there and people who we know are racist that are in the agency and in the, who we have. And even as Bill brought up, some of the Black police chiefs or chiefs here, trying to justify it. There is no justification to something like that at all. Plain and simple. There's no justification to that. But the issue is where are we getting our troops from? That's the issue, and that's the problem. What we need to be doing is really focusing on our community and developing those people from our community to be a part of our organization and agency. Those are the people who we want in our community because they have a vested interest. My mother lives in my community. Trust and believe, I'm gonna make sure that nothing's gonna happen over there. You had that officer friendly and you had that person that you knew each and every day would be in your neighborhoods. That's what we need to get to. But right now, we don't have it. Right now, we struggle to even have. One, people can't handle and deal with the stress and the day-to-day contact that you have with individuals and problems. And what we haven't talked about is the mental health. Some of these officers and some of these people on the street are really suffering from mental health issues and suffering from PTSD. So these are the things that when we talk about public safety and law enforcement, what they're dealing with. What happened down there in Texas? Unexcusable. There's nothing you can say that anybody, regardless if they were told to stand down or not, that as a man, you wouldn't say, hey, I'm not listening to this order. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna address and deal with this and we'll handle it later on. Plain and simple. You have to have common sense. And that's some things when you look at stuff, we don't have common sense.
We gotta get
John, I always say, if you're scared of fires.
Somebody go get a minute, Spivey, when I come back. I wanna say this. One of the biggest problems we haven't touched on is the FOP. The FOP is nothing but the Ku Klux Klan, man.
Right.
They are the Ku Klux Klan. If you don't get them out of your department, I don't care if you're the sheriff's department, FBI, we're going through the same thing over and over again, man.
Yeah.
Come on in, Spivey. Come on in.
I always make a joke. I said, if you're scared of fire, you shouldn't be a fireman.
Yeah.
It's the same way with police.
Mm-hmm.
When you put on that uniform and you get that gun and that badge, you take an oath to protect. If you're scared of someone and you feel that you tell someone to put their hands up or put their hands behind them and they tell you go to hell, if you don't feel confident in yourself that you can basically arrest that person without having to shoot them and kill them, you shouldn't be a police officer. And then the other thing that really troubles me a lot is, and if you go back, I talked earlier about doing your due diligence when you're hiring these policemen. I've read many, many situations where people are on one police department and they get dismissed because they are racist, they're redneck, or they did something, and they turn around and go to another police department.
That's right.
And join that police department. So now, are you gonna tell me that you did a background investigation and didn't find out why that person was released from the police department he was at prior to that? There's just no explanation for that.
Now in Maryland, there's a law. So we're governed under the Maryland Police Training Commission, which gives you your certification. So now with the law, if you get terminated, bottom line is they're not going to recertify you for another agency.
Yeah.
So that's where we talk about that. And then we talk about transparency and everything else. So now you have citizens on these administrative hearing boards. So you have a lot of change here in the state of Maryland in reference to what goes
In
on.
Maryland,
Don't
John.
forget, yeah, but don't forget, in some of these states, they have right to work states. So that's what you want to talk about. You can fire that person before they get off to the end of the shift. But as a whole, you have to look at where the culture is and what you're actually doing. When we had issues in some of those other areas throughout the country when it came to public safety, Florida was one of the states, and they got on TV and said, hey, for those officers who don't feel supported, come on down here to us. And I'm pretty sure you had to see that. So that makes you wonder, well, what are you bringing down there? So those are some of the things that we need to be looking at as far as what are these areas, what are these departments and agencies, and who are these heads, and what are they saying? That, hey, if you don't feel supported in your own community, come down here and we'll support you no matter what. That's what Bill was talking about as far as these chiefs and other areas not calling a spade a spade. You got to be honest. When you mess up, you mess up. When you on board, you on board, plain and simple. But you got to be transparent and honest. And you have to let citizens know, hey, we messed up on this. Here's where we are. When we did our job, you got to say, hey, here are the facts. And here's why I'm saying we did our job. Plain and simple.
Okay, Florida gave them a hiring bonus.
John, you got my vote. Okay.
Hey, Harold, you got somebody named Free Spirit. I think they wanted to say something.
Yeah, Michael, come on, take a minute, Michael. Everybody.
No, I was saying somebody named Free Spirit is on. They wanted to say something, but I don't know.
Free Spirit?
Yeah, I don't know if they got in there.
That's your buddy, Free Spirit. Where'd he go?
He's there. If he wants to talk, he can speak up.
Come on, Free Spirit. Yeah, we don't want to ignore you. Come on in.
Because then we got to see if Rich got his technical difficulties solved.
I had the hand up, but maybe it's down.
Where's Free Spirit? He's still there?
No, he's still there, but Rich, we still can't hear you, Rich.
Come on in, Michael. Take a minute, man. We got.
Oh man, Rich, we can't hear you.
Yeah, one of the things that's being done, and we need to make sure that we do, is that we do recruit more officers that look like the community in which they're patrolling. Alexandria at one time had 10 recruits, and only one of them was Black. And then they brought in another class of recruits, and none of them at all was Black. And then the one white officer that they did bring on, she quit within a month when she got out on the street because she ran up against a guy that was minding his own business. He had some mental issues. He was drinking and drugging, and the dude hit her and knocked her glasses so far off. We took us about a day to find her glasses, and she was in a daze. But her thing was that she saw somebody drunk, minding his own business, walking the street with her training officer. She jumps out. Instead of the training officer pulling her back, she allowed her to go and engage that individual, and that individual ended up hurting that lady real bad. So yeah, you have to know your clientele and the communities in which you patrol. And that's one thing that I'm really big on with Chief Hayes and a guy named Captain Ballantyne and some of their officers, is that they go into the community and we pinpoint what has taken place in some of those communities and why the community in some of those areas of Alexandria are very disrespectful or dislike law enforcement officers. Because like you say, that FOP is a very strong organization, and they bring some different fire in support of officers. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want you supporting me if I'm dead wrong. And then if I find out that you're wrong, there should be a double penalty attached to that. Because some of the officers from Alexandria, John was saying, I know 4 of them that went to Florida, and they didn't have a real good record here in Alexandria. And that's where they at. They're down around Panama City, and I think one of them went to Destin, which is right there, 50-mile radius, I believe. But yeah, we got to do a better job.
Ron, you want to come back in, Ron, as we go out of here? Take a minute, Ron. Okay.
I'm good.
Okay, Ron, say he's good. Okay, Bill, I'm gonna come on down the line. Take 1 minute, Bill. Bill, come on, Spivey. Come on, take 1 minute closing.
Well, the only thing I'll say is, and I think you all might have heard it, the thing that John was talking about, them leaving and going down to Florida to these police departments. Another thing that a lot of them are leaving because these departments are not only bringing these officers who have been dismissed from other departments now, but they even giving them signing bonuses. Some of those officers got $5,000, $10,000 signing bonuses to go down to these police departments, which is just ludicrous, to say the least.
Okay, John, take your minute.
I think this was a very good conversation, but I'm gonna tell you now, it's something that is always needed, but we need to make sure in our communities that we get our folks to be more part. And when we talk about something that's supposed to be serving us, we need to make sure that we have our representation there. It needs to be diverse, but we need to make sure that we look back and we lift each other up. So, you know, I stand on the shoulders of people who came before me, you know, and I need to make sure that we reach back and that we're very diverse and that we make sure we serve our communities like they need to be served.
John, what I want to say too, man, is that, you know, I'm seeing all these campaign people in Dawson, they talk about how they've been out there in the community for criminal justice, supporting the police on this and that. I know for a fact, the PG County Police Department, Hispanics took the department to court. Black cops took these departments to court. I didn't see none of these individuals talking about they were out there supporting our police departments. Not one of them, but they're running these campaigns like they were out there. And I know that. And one thing I'm gonna say, man, I remember when this kid ran over a PG County police officer and killed him. They took him down to Marlboro, Upper Marlboro. You understand? And you know what? The vigilantes went to work. They hung this kid in his cell. And then guess what? The jailer took the blame and did a year in jail. Those cops who hung that kid are still out there now. So you can't tell me about folks. I've been there. I've been in the war zone. I know what it is. I had to protect my brother when he was a sergeant in the DC Police Department, because when white cops disrespected him, you know where they found themselves? Laying out. So that's what, man, until we find a way, man, to bring us all together, man, and stop playing these politician games, man, and help out. We ain't not gonna be able to help anybody by being quiet. 50 years I've been doing this. I ain't never changed my way, man, because right is right and wrong is wrong, man.
It's true.
Sure.
Come on, Gary.
All right, Rich, this is your last shot, brother. Oh, Rich, man. No, man. Rich, I tell you what, Rich, the next show, you and I are going to have a practice session before the show. Oh, man. Gee whiz. At least you can hear us.
Gary, talk about that guy behind you, man, because we both, that was my man on the streets. That was my partner in the U Street corridor.
This was a book that was written in 1974, the cover you see, by a lady named Ina R. Friedman, who was a Jewish woman. Her husband was an attorney, and he got a friendship with Tillman O'Brien. And she decided to write a book on it. She had written books on the Holocaust and different other situations. And Tillman O'Brien was a cop, you know, who was in the city, in the trenches. He was a friend of my mother's and Bertel Jefferson, who later became chief of police in DC. And they used to have study sessions to get Black officers up through the ranks. During the riots, he was there. So he was always in and out of my house, but he was like the model. You know, they would be in the schools. When I was a kid in DC, they called him officer friendly. We were taught not to fear the police. You know, they would come into the neighborhood, they would walk. One officer said, the reason the police were so successful when we were growing up is because they would walk the streets. Mm-hmm. They weren't in the cars with air conditioning. Mm-hmm. They had to walk with us, and they became known. You know, people on our block, you know, if it was hot, you know, the ladies would give them water and make sure that they could be nice and comfortable walking the street. We had respect for the police. It was different. And he was a large part of that, rising to assistant chief of police during his day in the 70s.
Well, and I just want to say this about Tillman, man, that as a roving leader, you know, I worked the Cardozo area, and Tillman, like I said, was assistant chief. So when the riots hit, I was standing on the corner of 9th and U Street with Willie Wood, who was a roving leader too. We had just had lunch at Chez Maurice across the street. Beautiful day, April 4th, I'll never forget it. We hanging out and everybody riding by the car hollering at Willie Wood, because everybody knew Willie Wood on the champion Green Bay Packers, you know, we just hanging out. And suddenly somebody said, my friend of mine named Harvey, riding in a convertible, say, Harold, they just shot and killed Dr. King in Memphis, Tennessee. So I said, what did Harvey just say? Willie Wood looked at me and said, I think he said that Dr. King was shot and killed. By that time, people are coming out of the restaurant where we had just had lunch. They said, yeah, Dr. King has been shot. So now we're walking down U Street corridor. Judge Luke Moore, the first Black in charge, modern day, he wasn't the first. Frederick Douglass was the first Black U.S. Marshal in charge. Luke Moore was the second. Well, Luke was known all over the community. So Luke, Willie, and I, we walked arm in arm down the U Street corridor. We get in front of Ben's Chili Bowl. Luke said, let me go here and see what Ben is talking about, and I'll be right back. By that time, I called up to the DC Recreation Department, and my boss tell me, hey, Tillman O'Brien just called for you. He wants you down at the V Street headquarters. So I go down there, I said, what the hell is going on? So I go in, the lady said, yeah, the sergeant waiting for you. I mean, the chief is waiting for you downstairs, Mr. Bell. I go down and I see all these cops, man, they got riot gear on, they got the rifles and everything. And Tillman's talking to him. He calls me up, Bell, Harold, come here, Harold. I said, what's up, chief? He said, I'm swearing you in. I'm swearing you in. We need you out there because you can help us save some lives. He gave me a police badge. I said, holy chief, you want me to go back out there with just a police badge? Where's my gun? He said, Harold, I can't give you no gun, man. He said, everybody know you're gonna be all right. But that's how he was. He knew the community. He knew in the community who to touch and who to tap. I was out there 3 days and 3 nights, scared to death. You understand? But I got through it. So Tillman O'Brien should have been chief, but they knew the kind of man that he was, buddy. He wasn't taking no coins, man. That, you know, he just was a great human being, man. And he walked the street by himself. So, man, I want to thank John. John, thank you so much for taking time out, man.
Thank you for having me. No, I appreciate this. I love this. Hopefully I can come back.
Oh, yeah, anytime. And Bill, thank you so much, man.
Hey, thanks, Harold, for inviting me.
Wealth of information. And
hey, Harold, we got Free Spirit. He didn't have a mic problem. He didn't have a mic, but I don't know if we give him, you know, his shot there.
I was on the other computer and I didn't have a mic or a camera.
That's all right.
So when they called my name, I changed computers. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm new to Florida, out of Prince George's County, Upper Marlboro.
Well, Free Spirit, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here a number of times, man. And we got to have you back, man. This was a fantastic show. Definitely speak the truth. And that's what we've been all about. And of course, my man, Rick, we got to get you back, man. When you get on the mic, man. I just want to say, this been a real rough week for me. I had 2 of my kids from back in the day when I was working as a roving leader. I had one die on Tuesday of a heart attack when I had my back. Then I had one that was run over by a truck downtown on Thursday morning, killed Michael G. And of course, my man, William Walker, man. Young dudes, man, that was it. That was in the struggle with me, with kids in trouble, man. I lost them too, so I just want to send out my deepest sympathy to the family. And then a Bishop Samuel Butte McPherson, who was a bishop, come out of Northeast Projects, Parkside. He was younger than me, but he was a bishop. He died. And Butte told me one thing. He was in and out of jail all the time. So I said, Butte, man, you're home on vacation? He said, I'm telling you, Harold, I'm getting ready to go into the ministry. I said, what? Go into the ministry? He said, yeah. I said, I'm going where you're allowed to stick up people and get away with it. Look, he was in the ministry and became a bishop, man. He understood what the real deal was, man. I just want to say, and we keep it real here. So don't make no mistake about it. Ain't nobody making up nothing. And And I just want to say, man, it's a lot of honest and good people out there. Not all the politicians are crooks, man, but these guys are just looking for something where they don't have to work. Believe me, they could go from one place to another. And I want to leave you with this, man, that Alice Jones and Mildred Evans, two fine women. One was 91, one was 96. They just had funerals. They were like big sisters to me. But look, I just want to say, I want y'all to remember as you're out there, that remember this: you cannot hang out with chickens and soar with eagles. You cannot hang out with chickens and soar with eagles. Gary, you got it out of here.
Let's go out here with George Carlin, and we'll take it from there. And then as far as this broadcast will be concerned, probably sometime this evening, it will be on the homepage of blackmeninamerica.com, as well as our other social media platforms. You can watch it, you can get the link, and you can forward it to anybody you want. But let's look at comedy, because comedy is life for real.
But there's a reason. There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right.
So they don't want that.
Go, John, go, John, go, John, go, John.
All right, everybody, be safe. Thank you for coming on the show. And again, you can check back in a few hours on blackmeninamerica.com and on our Twitter and social media feeds, and you can watch this show. Be safe, everybody. I'm out.